depending on what time zone you're in. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. This is a special occasion for us. We've got I would say not the whole Kosher Giving team, but a significant part of the Kosher Giving team. We'll speak about that in a second. My name is Avi Zimmerman. I am the author of Kosher Giving, 4 Steps to Creating Your Meaningful, Mindful, and Measurable Philanthropy Plan. The pre-title of the book is actually The Donor's Guide to War and Peace. And we're actually going to speak about that this evening, of course, time permitting. It is evening for us. We're in Jerusalem time, spread across Israel, 8:30 p.m. by us. But I know some of the people joining us are from other parts of the world. And so this is where we are. We hope that the kids are asleep. Talia, are the kids asleep?
Yes.
Yes. You're confident about that.
No, I'm not 100% confident, but most should be by now.
Most should be by now. And Yael, your kids, I think, are a little older. You don't have to tuck them in.
Oh yeah, they're watching a movie right now before the bedtime routine wraps up. So I've got some time.
As long as they're not taking from your bandwidth, we are happy campers.
So, yes, that's what I said. No Xbox.
So everybody, we are of course in this conversation with Yael Maoz, Dr. Yael Maoz of Beverly House Press, and that's the publisher of the book, and Talia Blatman, who is the editor. And it's kind of interesting the way all of this came together. And so what we'd like to do is tell a little bit of a story about how this book was birthed through this war, the Iron Swords War, which is kind of funny. The name of the book, as it appears, the title, after going through, Yael, how many was it, like 20 different versions of the cover?
Yeah. Well, there were 20 that you looked at. There were even more that I looked at. So yes, I think at the end it was close to 60 that I was going through and weeding out before you even got to look at them. It was, yeah.
So I thought that was difficult. Now it's not just me. But at the top there, it says, there's a little banner. This is the 2024 Iron Swords War edition of the book. And it's interesting because we're not even sure that by the end of 2024, the war is still going to be called the Iron Swords War. What is significant, though, is it was born during this war, and it was born pretty quickly, from the writing to the execution and to, just getting to the process where we've launched this week. I'll just say off the bat that we're very, very pleased. It did become an overnight bestseller. It's registered in 3 categories on Amazon. The first category is nonprofit management and leadership. The second category is Christian stewardship, and the third category is Jewish life. In categories 1 and 2, it's been at the top, the #1 bestseller on Amazon throughout the week, this being launch week. That Jewish life piece, we have yet to really nail #1. We are just behind 1 other book. Sometimes we're behind 2 other books. And maybe even by the end of this call, with everybody who's tuning in, we can even tip the scales and get to that #1 bestseller. In fact, we're going to be a little bit markety, but I want everyone to understand that this is not markety. Oh no, we're blocking Yael's face, so we're only going to do this.
It's all right. Go buy the book. Buy the book.
Well, buy the book, and folks, it's on sale for 99 cents. This is the ebook. The hardcover is coming out in a few weeks. It is on sale for 99 cents. And the reason is, believe it or not, it's not a huge moneymaker. Yes, if we sold 1 million copies during this week, 99 cents would be a great deal. Yeah, I think it's only going to get to 1 million copies next week. So it is to boost the sales. It is really to bring attention to the book. And that's what Launch Week is all about. It's about bringing attention. So if we flash this across the screen, and apologize, it's not supposed to hurt you, Yael, then everybody will know what that's all about. So
so I would say everybody should do a search when you go to Amazon. Do a search for Jewish life, kosher giving, and hopefully that will help also to raise the rankings in the Jewish life category, and place your orders, and it will be delivered automatically.
Can you explain that for a second, Yael? Does it matter? Because I tested it out today. When I first went into Kosher Giving on Amazon, it sent me to all kinds of other books that said kosher or giving, but it didn't have both. Today, when I checked it out, this is the #1 Kosher Giving search. Alternatively, if we look for Avi Zimmerman anywhere on Amazon, not only in books, it also takes you straight to the book. It's interesting to note that there are apparently no other like Avi Zimmerman stores that
Zimmerman's,
sell
yeah.
women's clothing, right?
You.
Go figure.
Yeah.
So it's the brand is kind of unique. Although I know a few other Avi Zimmermans, apparently they're not selling a lot of things on Amazon.
You know,
Should people actually
Good for you.
go do the search intentionally for Jewish life? Will that change the ranking?
No, I don't think so. Basically, the way that books work is, just like we think about Google is a search engine, we use a lot of other tools as search engines also. So YouTube and Amazon are also search engines in their own way. And so what happens is that over time, there are keywords that begin to be attached to different products or videos or what have you, right? Just like we have like SEO, search engine optimization for Google, we have keywords that we think about for the book as well. So basically we just need to hit a certain number of sales for a book to hit number one in a category, right? It just needs to sell more than the other book. What I'm looking for is I want people that are looking for Jewish content to also be finding it, because we know that, our Christian friends out there have been really amazing and supportive, and we want the Jewish community to also see what a great book this is and what a great service it is to them as well.
It is ironic that Kosher Giving hit number one and has stayed at number one in Christian stewardship long before hitting number one in Jewish life. So it actually, I think that speaks volumes in and of itself. I get a really good kick out of that when speaking with my Christian friends, as this last week's conversations have led us to really try to figure out, like, what's that piece? What is kosher giving for Christians? And you can expect to see more about that coming to the fore over the coming weeks and primarily months as we unpack all of the potential of kosher giving. But let's start with where we are right now. And again, Yael is our publisher, pardon, and Talia is our editor. And it's actually, I would call this a circular economy story, because Talia was brought into Kosher Giving before it even became a book. It started as a web platform. Maybe we'll say a word about that. And then have a challenge. We, not the people at Sector 4, but the collective we, Israel. Because on the one hand, there was a great deal of needs, right? Needs that Israel has never experienced before, needs that no one should have to ever experience, certainly not on such a colossal level. And theoretically matching that, we had a surge in this interest from the donor community in Israel, beyond Israel, and people were throwing money at projects, at causes. And so this was, if things are as bad as they are, and they were very bad, at least there was a solution, right? But what happens when that solution doesn't sync up well with the needs? And those are some of the kind of fault lines of philanthropy to begin with. It doesn't start with this war. But just because there's more to go around, either more causes / needs or more philanthropy, doesn't mean that there's going to be an alignment between those two. And there's actually a third part to that. Maybe we'll speak a little bit more about how we understand philanthropy and how we can put everything into its own little box and help us better construct our philanthropy plans. But we can hold off for that. The need was, how do we help inform the donor community to give better? We came up with the concept of kosher giving. We put together a web platform, but to put together a web platform, our small advisory firm, as a volunteer effort, or call it a social enterprise during the war, we needed a team really of volunteers just to get this jump started. And I know Talia from the city of Ariel, where we both live, and I know that she's a copywriter, and I know that she's a very capable copywriter, and I asked her to join the copywriting team. And she was not the only one. We were very, very fortunate to get a number of volunteers really jumping in very, very quickly. But Talia was there to help this thing get off the ground, as were Yael and Avram, who I mentioned before. Not Yael, who we have on this call right now with us, who is Yael with a Y, but Yael Kurtz, who is Yael with a J. Anyway, Talia, why is it that when we first kind of called you, and your husband was going off to reserve duty, you have the kids at home, if I remember correctly, you had to relocate to Ra'anana due to all of the challenging circumstances. Why did you say yes to a volunteer project that you really didn't have time for?
Right. So, well, first of all, My husband was serving in Picud Orif, and he was basically on October 7th. He already knew that he was getting called up. And when there was a threat of an infiltration in Ariel, my kids kind of freaked out in the safe room. And we just decided, if my husband's not going to be here, it will make the kids feel better if we go and stay with my parents, even though they're the ones that get the rocket sirens and Ariel doesn't. And so really, I didn't have that extra burden of the kids are being home. All of a sudden I had childcare, no work. Everyone was in survival mode. No one was sending work. I needed a distraction from the sirens, from the worry. And I also needed to feel like I was doing something meaningful. And so while a lot of people say you never volunteer in the field that you get paid for, I just felt like that's something that I can do. I can do it in my pajamas from my couch. And why not? Why not do something that will help other people do good as well? And it really doesn't take that much out of me. I mean, a blog post every day or every other day, it's half an hour, 45 minutes of my time. It was the least I could do. It brought me up close and personal with some really great causes. And it's really opened the doors for a lot of people to benefit in what's otherwise just a horrible time.
Yes, and it was pretty intense though. Even when we have this, it's something that you can do, and you found a way to make it work with the schedule. Content development is very demanding. It's something that we at Sector 4 had never been tasked or never tasked ourselves with before. But as a team, we really put it all together, and everybody really came together in a way that we were experiencing all over Israel. I think, though, what you said, Talia, reminds me also what Tal Mizrahi, our web developer, said. She had found herself volunteering for food drives and packaging things and sending them off to the war front. And she's a web developer, and she felt that her skills, her mind could be put to better use by spending that effort on, what it is that she can do, maybe from her couch. It actually wasn't from her couch. She was dodging rockets where she was in Tel Aviv, but to do so with her computer, with her laptop, and to birth something that was going to be significant. And the idea here was to really give tools to the donor community, not to focus on the causes for the sake of raising more funds for the causes, and that is critical, but really, what were the worthy and trustworthy projects that a curious philanthropist donor who wanted to know what was going on in Israel, especially those who were outside of Israel and couldn't possibly have the direct interaction and be here on the ground with those projects, who's going to be on the ground, who's going to be the grassroots to research that for them and give them some tools, transparency, let them know where their money's going. That's what Kosher Giving was. It could have
really liked. What I really liked about the book is how you really tied in some amazing stories. And I hope that in just a few minutes, maybe you could share some of your favorite stories. And Talia, you also like things that you really, were impressed with when you read the book, about stories about how donors really had to adjust their giving during this time. It's been very eye-opening. And I thought it was, reading the book and getting a bit more behind the scenes of how our philanthropies having to adapt, how our donors having to adapt, and what can we learn from that? And Avi, you were in such a great position to really see the big picture and how all that came together, and to provide and outline guidelines for what can people do if they want to give better, especially during times like this where, man, your heart is just breaking open and everybody wants to know, what can I do? Where can I help? Even professional organizations had groups coming together, raising funds together to buy, equipment or medical supplies. And, I just, when you told me about the idea for the book, I thought it was so relevant and so timely, that people really needed this. And we see now the war is still going on. Like, it's going to continue to be something a book that I hope people will be reaching for, and will see, how it can guide them in making good choices and good use of the funds that, Hashem, God, has blessed us with. So maybe you could share the QR code again, also in case anybody who's just joined,
Yeah,
please,
there's
if you have a copy.
Yeah, the Yael covering QR code. Again, apologies, Yael. It's really simple, though. If QR codes aren't your thing, it's koshergiving.com/book. That'll take you to the landing page. The landing page gives you not only the link directly to the Amazon purchase of the ebook. Again, we're right now in ebook mode, and only in a couple of weeks will we be releasing the hardcover. The ebook is at that low price of 99 cents just to get it out there and to get the conversation going. But you also get a couple of bonuses. And really, I want to thank Yael for guiding me to help guide people better. It would have just been a book. Not really appreciating the fact that people needed to use some of the tools that we use as a consultancy to actually give that to people as a gift. And so there's a 64-page journal that is it's a giveaway with your book. Go ahead, you download the journal, and that is your pathway to walking through this transformative process of becoming a better giver. And then there's the Excel file. It's a workbook, and I know Excels are really, really scary, but they shouldn't be scary, and they're actually it is designed to be very, very user-friendly. We believe that it is. The experiences that we've had speaking with people is that it is, and everybody should be able to look at their giving like they would look at a spreadsheet, only more user-friendly. And you download that, and you'll be receiving in the email also all sorts of tutorials just to make sure you're using it properly. And we're always available at Sector 4 in the Kosher Giving to enter any questions you might have about using that better. So that's that code in front of you, koshergiving.com/book. We are trying to get to that number one slot in that third category. We should probably just be happy with where we are, which is number one in two categories. But there is one more category, and we're just one book away. And so hopefully with a few more sales, we'll get there as well. Yael, you asked about the stories. I couldn't put most of the stories that touched me in the book. I put some of the stories in the book. There was a lot more that went into this. I just had a strict publisher and a strict editor. Both of you kept me to a schedule. And so I would have loved to just go out and spend more time writing and expounding, but I really tried to bring it into a clear focus. There is not a story there that wasn't touching. So whether we're talking about, one of the first interviews that we did for koshergiving.com actually appears there. It's a story of Talia Blatman, who herself lost her son in a previous conflict back in 2021, the only soldier who was killed in the conflict. And he created one of these organizations that does what so many other organizations do today, which is support the soldiers, and not just support the soldiers, but they had this entire operation working with social services to find the soldiers that needed the most economic support. And those are the ones that they were really embracing. It's an amazing operation, but she also realized at the beginning of the war what so many did not, which is, and not to anyone's detriment, nobody's wrong in this, but she realized that she needed to shift gears pretty much before everybody else. Everybody doing what we normally do when there's a war here, which is we run with bags and bags and bags of bamba, right? These snacks and treats, and bring them to the front lines and support the soldiers. And everybody was doing that. You had to wait online to be able to give packages. That doesn't mean, again, the misalignments, it doesn't mean that the packages were getting to all the soldiers. Some soldiers were getting a lot and getting stomach aches, and the other were not getting a lot and getting stomach aches for the opposite reason. But everybody was doing that. And she realized that this organization that was already a very well-oiled machine doing that, they needed to do something else. They needed to tend to the families of all of those families who were, I can't say destroyed, but who were significantly hurt because they lost their loved ones, sometimes multiple people in the family. Because she not only was there for the soldiers, but she herself lost her own son. And so she knew exactly what that was like. And she said, for me, I was the only one. And so the entire country was behind me. Now there's so many people, the whole country can't be with everyone at the same time. So that pivot was very, very significant. And it helped you understand just, first of all, the resilience of the community, the inspirational social activism that came to the fore during this war and continues to do so. But also the needs to, again, you spoke about Yael, we would say stewarding the resources that we have. In this case, it's not her own money, it's the time and effort of an entire organization, making sure that that's well aligned with the most pressing needs. That takes real thought. It's easier to go into automatic mode, but it's oftentimes more purposeful and more impactful to be more thoughtful.
Yeah. I thought it was also interesting how, you talk about in the book that some people put in the thought and they're ready to pivot and say, what does the country need right now? How can we best serve the people that need it most? And then there are other people that were just like, put blinders on, we're going to do what we know how to do, and that's what we're going to keep doing. And then you said something interesting. It totally surprised me, as you said some people just froze up and they actually were still collecting money, but they were holding on to the money going like, okay, we have to figure out what's the best thing to do with this money. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And I was like, oh, that is so interesting. And I guess, that's where somebody would come to a firm like yours to help them make these decisions, and to have a framework on which to make those decisions and where to make those decisions from.
Yeah, there's also the opposite story, which helps us get some perspective. It's the story of the liquidator that I speak about towards the beginning of the book. And he was so enthusiastic about literally liquidating his entire foundation because he felt—
I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, well, this was the war. This was, the call was very, very intense. The situation here was and remains by many respects, but certainly at the beginning of the war, was very intense. And you have to really honor somebody who says, you know what, this is the time to do this. There's no questions here. Like, this is what, if I have these resources, they go now. There's only one challenge with that, which is if you spend everything now, do you have the conduit through whom you can be sure that that money is going to be used most effectively? And the challenge here is that it's really hard to do that well. It's hard to do that well overnight because guess what? Overnight, nobody knew how to prioritize all the projects. And I would argue that even now, and we're 4 months in, just about, we still don't know how to prioritize them. I would never take upon myself the responsibility of telling somebody this is more important. I would instead guide someone to figure out what is more fitting and appropriate for them, their purpose, their goals, their interests, and their values. But I would not say that just because you value something that it is necessarily more important than something else. To really create a hierarchy here is a very dangerous thing to do. But even if you knew what you wanted to prioritize, how do you know that those funds are going to trickle down into the project that you want to get it to? If you want to liquidate at the beginning of, or the fourth quarter of 2023, say, okay, I want everything to go. It's fine that you want to do that, but does somebody know how to disseminate those resources in an effective way in that short period of time? And are those the most important needs, or maybe the needs to rebuild after the war? After, initially, let's say the Israeli government steps in, what happens when that support maybe wanes? So these are really, really challenging questions. You're right, Yael. There's one end of the spectrum, which is, let's hold on to this and see what happens. There's the other extreme, and owners really know where they want to be on that.
Wow.
Just
So,
to jump in,
Talia,
sorry.
Yeah,
I was going to say the value of the book is that, yes, this is a book about money and philanthropy and giving, but if you actually read through the messages, it can apply to any type of giving that's not money. You want to make an impact, you want to volunteer, you want to do something, you can follow the same steps and make sure you're aligned in the same way, and your giving will be better. It'll be more impactful, and it'll make that I have family that, the war started and they were spending every day in these war rooms, preparing meals, and, how much of it actually got to the right people who were able to eat it, how much got thrown out, how much money was raised for tactical vests that weren't bought, how much time was spent going to fields and picking things, and did those fruits and vegetables actually get to a supermarket for people to buy them and support the farmers? It's definitely a book about money and giving money, but you don't have to be a rich philanthropist to read it, learn from it, and benefit from it. It's really something that anybody who wants to make an impact through giving of any kind can really, and that really to me transcends any story that you're going to read in the book.
Oh, yeah, thank you for that. I do want to say the conversations that I've been having with people and the Amazon reviews and the responses have indicated that there's a lot of follow-on learning for this. And we're probably going to be releasing some courses and some additional content, supplementary content, because we're realizing that things like what you just described, because Talia, you just said two things, not one. The first one is it's every kind of giving, right? And it could be the time that we're giving, and it could be our talents, as you gave, right, when we started with koshergiving.com, and it could be also your resources, your quote unquote treasures. But it doesn't have to be all three. The other thing that you said, which is really interesting, I had a conversation with somebody today, just this afternoon here in Ariel. We were waiting for Mincha, the afternoon prayer service, to begin, and we were talking about the book. Surprise, surprise. And so he was talking about, he's a CPA and balance sheets and giving and large scale giving. And one of the things that I've heard from a number of people who initially read it was like, I wish I had more money to give. But what's really, really important is you don't need more money to give better. More is not necessarily better. In fact, we just talked about how more can be not worse, but more could be wasteful. So giving better is not about the size of the check. It's not about the size of the contribution. It is about the orientation. It's about how do we give? And that's something that can be done at each and every level. And I'm already conjuring up in my mind, and I sent some stuff for some launch events in the US earlier today. And there will be some programs, it seems like, which are, give like a millionaire, okay, without being one, and without giving away $1 million. Because we kind of think that, oh, well, if you're giving $10 million, then you're probably going to have a team working with you. So number one, surprise, spoiler, there are lots of people giving $10 million. That's not a lot of people giving $10 million, but amongst those who do, not everybody has a team. And that's okay. But you don't have to wait for those kind of gifts. The numbers we were talking about today, somebody who simply gives maaser ksafim, they tithe. And let's say they're giving $1,000 a month. Okay, that's how their tithe works. That's $12,000 a year. That's not a small sum of money. Yes, my CPA friend said, well, yeah, but really, we give it in small increments. We don't give it all at once. But he's a CPA, right? Come on, look at the balance sheet. Look at the entire year. Look at the impact that you can generate. Just because we have tendencies to give a certain way, our brain goes into a different sort of orientation when we give as opposed to when we invest. But would you invest $10,000, $12,000 a year without really knowing where it went? Would you not know? Would you not be keeping track of where it went? And would you not be keeping track of the impact that it generated? The answer is, of course, you would. So let's make sure that our giving is at least as good or comes somewhat close to the way that we invest in capital gains.
Really good advice. I know that one of the things that I also really liked about this, that I think that, for sure, the religious Jewish community can relate to, is how you tied in these, our foundations of giving and where that comes from, and kind of like what are the guidelines that we go by as, people of faith, whether that's, basing it on the Bible, on the Torah, or also, on the teachings from Maimonides. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that and kind of what inspired you to include that in the book as well.
Well, I have to say, Yael, I had a little bit of a different perspective going into this than my publisher had, right? So what happened was, we talked about expediting this process. So again, it was Talia, who was working with Kosher Giving, volunteering with koshergiving.com, who introduced me to Yael. I said, you know what? I need to do a book about this. It's not enough to speak about the projects. We need to speak about the concepts, about the orientation. And so she immediately recommended Yael, and Yael ended up bringing Talia back into the conversation as the editor. But when I spoke to Yael, I think it was the beginning of November, more or less, middle of November. And I said, Yael, I really want to do this book by the end of 2023. And we said we would want to launch by the end of 2023 or by the end of January. And indeed, we are launching by the end of January. And you're like, great, no problem. You've got 2 weeks to write the book. I'm like, Yael, I never actually wrote a book before. It seems to me like I might need to put in more than 2 weeks. Oh, no problem. And so, Yael, you were saying that we could do like a kind of slim book. And I said, slim, that's a pamphlet. That's not a book. I'm not going to invest all this effort into something that's a pamphlet. Anyway, so we came to the number that this book should be about 40,000 words. So I said, okay, 40,000 words. Simple calculation. I've got to do 20K words a week. I've written, I've blogged. I've never written 20,000 words in a week, and certainly not in a coherent way that it would look like a book. But I said, okay, I told my wife, Donna, and the kids, give me some space if you don't mind. I'm just not going to sleep for a week. I might be a little cranky, and I just need to, put out 20,000 words. And I'm so proud of myself after week one, patting myself on the back. And there's Yael looking at me from the other side of the Zoom screen saying, it's great that you did the 20,000 words, but you wrote the wrong half of the book. You didn't say that way. You were much more diplomatic than that. But I was writing this whole thing that's just about what you described, which is the kosher or Jewish orientation, Jewish framing, Jewish roots and traditions for what giving should be like. And and I was trying to keep it concise. I didn't, and my part 2 of the book was the how-to. And so I assume you recall what that was like, where you're basically like, basically we just need the how-to. So I'm like, well, how am I going to stretch the how-to into 40,000 words in 1 week? So the big secret that I'm going to share here on this is that I stole some of my original content from week 1 and I brought it into week 2. But for the most part, week 2 was a brand new book. And miraculously, that was done. So there are some elements that are there, but it's really interspersed in a how-to book. And it's designed to give us our bearings. It's more like a compass rather than a deep study of these themes, which I find fascinating. And we might find in some additional supplemental material that comes out.
I think it would be great if you do it as supplemental materials. And I think that, the readers can speak for themselves. Everybody should go out, buy the book, read the book. And if you want more, you should tell Avi so he'll write another book that's just on that.
Because I need to work again. But the truth is, I've been surprisingly really responsive to everybody who's written to me. I've really loved this project. And so, sometimes you're really, really fired up and you're going to fire off an email as soon as something hits your inbox. This is that season for me. So when you have thoughts on this and adjustments, it is a work in progress. This is edition number 1 for the book. We'll see where this goes as well. Some follow-on projects do include the, you don't have to be a millionaire to give like a millionaire kind of themes. Other themes, like we mentioned before, the kosher giving for Christians, and yes, even the Maimonides chapter that we put in the end, I felt was a strong pivot in the middle of the book, and so Yael said, that could be a good place for it. We put it there, but that was also a chapter that we really made more concise. I think there's an entire book that can be just about the Rambam, Maimonides, because his, and many people are familiar with this and not everybody, but Maimonides has an 8-tier or hierarchy of 8 different ways of giving. And if you really study it closely, and we do group it this way together in the book, it's more like 4 different tiers. It's 2 at the bottom, then 2, then another 3. That brings you to 7. And then there's the top level, which is actually not quote unquote what we call giving at all, but it is giving an opportunity. It is giving a loan. It is giving people a job. It is what we would call maybe not giving, but partnership. And so that's there. I think there's an entire book that could be written just on that theme alone. But I've gotten some really solid feedback, both from Jewish and Christian friends, that they're loving it. They love that there's this point of reference that roots them in something that's not theoretical, but very, very meaningful and practical at the same time. Remember, this is our meaningful, mindful, and measurable philanthropy plan.
Yeah. Yeah. So Talia, I know that you've also done a lot of the writing and stuff for the website. Can you talk a little bit about that and what's available on the website, what you guys see there, what you like?
Well, so basically how it would work was I'd get a message from Avi. So you available to write something today? I have an interview waiting for you. And most of the time it was like, yeah, no problem. I think there were like 2 times that I actually like couldn't, but otherwise, all of a sudden, like, I opened this document and there's this interview with someone. Sometimes it was an organization that I knew. Once or twice it was an organization I may have interviewed at one point or another in life.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. In the end, everything is from above, and there was a reason I went freelance, and I appreciate it every day. But regardless of what it was, it really opened my eyes to seeing, understanding what these organizations were before the war, and also what they became. Because no matter what they were doing during the war, none of them remained static. They all had some sort of war effort, whether it was leveraging something they were already doing or pivoting to something else. And one of them that actually didn't make the book, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Did Open Door make the book?
No, it did not.
No. So that's an organization, Open Door Media, that really works on a lot of educational content about Israel, about Judaism. And so for them during the war, it wasn't necessarily, they didn't need to pivot. They kickstarted, they lit a fire under what they were already doing. That really stuck out to me. Like, you can use what you have to make an even bigger impression, a bigger impact when you're needed. So that really stuck with me. Yeah, and it was definitely fun to see some of the blog posts appear in the book as well. It tied
Right.
in for me.
Well, I told Avi one of the things that we could do, when we were talking about timelines and trying to get things in, I'm like, you guys have a website, koshergiving.com. You have these articles. Try as much as possible that you can use content that you already have. Once we have the framework for the book, and Avi and I had talked about that, what does the framework need to look like? What are the components of this book to really, to design it in such a way so it will have the impact that Avi really wanted it to have for Sector 4 and for Kosher Giving. And so we talked about that, and we're able to pull some things from the website for that.
Right. So I don't see them as articles that were pulled. I really see them as, as stories about these organizations, where you really get to see each one's, their identity. And so, in my line of work, at least, I turn everything into a story. Everything's a narrative. And so to use a narrative, to take something that, no offense, Avi, is, financial stuff to me is always going to be really, really dry and boring. But when you add in those stories, so all of a sudden, like, the finances and the dry information comes to life. It becomes a lot more, tangible. It's something that you can apply, even if you're not a numbers person. Even if you've never thought of giving in a concrete way, you have this story and it connects you. And so to me, that was a really valuable addition to the book.
Well, I have to pat myself on the back for knowing that I don't know everything. And whether it was when Yael told me first, you wrote the wrong book, back to the drawing board, or it was, you really want to get some more things, the anecdotes, or even the my personal experiences that, I don't like to toot my own horn. It's just not. It's not something I like to do. I'm uncomfortable about it. But Yael just kept saying, we need to know, how do people even know that you know what you're talking about, right? And I listened and I responded, and even then, it's funny, we're in a private chat here, and Yael's just like, it's a good time to put up the book link to make sure people know. and she's sacrificing herself. She's willing to cover herself up. We can't see Yael. We can see the book link, koshergiving.com/book. Yes, #1 bestseller in 2 out of 3 categories. We're behind one book in category #3, Jewish life. So we still want to get there. So thank you for the reminder, Yael. But without Yael reminding me, I just don't do that. And I think it really has paid off. We're seeing that this whole system where people get this opportunity to download those free bonuses, and then they go and they basically are asking us for additional guidance. And we have a system now in place where we can give that to them. If you don't put something on offer, people aren't going to know that it's available. And so again, I'm listening.
Also that you can help them. I mean, this whole book, the whole vision was to help people, right? And that was one of the things that I really tried to help you understand is like, it can't, you're just going to leave them with a book that's all they get. Like what if they need more help? You know, what if they want to take it a step further? What if they need to organize all their thoughts? Like practically, how are they going to apply this? And, you know, when talking about it, we came up with the workbook, we came up with the journal. So definitely make sure that you're getting those extra things to go along with the book, because they really help a lot. And then it gives you direct access to Avi and his team, so that, you know, as things come up, if you have questions, you know, you guys can reach out to them and the team. And, you know, that's the world we live in today, for good or for bad. We're all interconnected. We might as well use it for good.
Yeah, the bottom line is, you know, we talk about giving is you receive when you give, but really this is a gift. It's a gift. It's not, the bonuses aren't the only gift. You know, the selling a book for $1 is a gift. Just getting it out there, and it is an opportunity. You know, for a number of years, I thought about writing a book. I mentioned that I wrote the wrong book before, but really I wrote the completely wrong book because I was actually on my own personal life scheduled to start writing a book on October 8th. Because as they say, you folks in the publishing and editing world, sometimes you have a book inside of you and it needs to come out. I had a different book inside of me that wanted to come out, but didn't need to come out. It was called 40. I remember, Yael, I called you at the beginning. I said 49 timeless lessons in leadership. It was going to be 49 lessons from scripture about leadership.
Which I still think would be a fabulous book, but it's not for now.
It wasn't for now. And so, but I started writing that on October 8, 9, and 10 because I had my schedule and I needed some sense of stability and creativity and making a contribution when everything was so chaotic. But I realized, again, I was writing the wrong book. And so the book that had to come out was this one. This wasn't the book that I intended to write, but it was the book that just needed to be there. And so you're right, offer. And part of my role as a steward is saying, if I have something to share, it is my responsibility to share it. Just like Talia was saying before, if you have something to give, and whether it's a monetary contribution or something else, it's ultimately a responsibility. And we are entrusted with these things so that we will use them well. And so that's why I need to learn from the pros.
Well, I don't know about pros. I think we could be proud and humble. So I think, Avi, you definitely have a lot to be proud of. And I think we're all just humbled about the people that have come out, that have bought the book, and just the people that have spoken up and who are giving, who are really giving of their time, giving of their funds, to help out in any way that they can during this war. You know, we all live here. We mentioned that at the beginning of this live. Avi and Talia and myself, we all live in Israel. And thank you. Thank you. I think that bears being said as well.
100%. 100%. It is, you talked about the interconnectivity. You spoke about the different people here and elsewhere. Also, this idea that kosher can be universal is a little bit of a tricky idea. It's worth saying that as well. Is kosher, you know, something for the way that we eat, or something about the way that we live our lives? Are there ways of doing things that are common for everybody? And in the book, basically, I argue that there are universal concepts of giving. It was really interesting. Yesterday, I was on the phone with a gentleman, Alan Pratt, from The Signatory, which is a Christian foundation that handles donor-advised funds, very, very large significant funds. Then they're all over the world, and it's really pretty impressive work. And Alan is a leader there in the Northwest region of the United States. And he and I were talking about some of, again, the Jewish context for giving, but he was speaking about it from a Christian faith perspective. And so much, it was almost verbatim, things that he had read out of the book. The only thing is he didn't have a copy yet. And so, the more we give our thought to this, and it's mindful, meaningful, and of course, measurable, the more we come to some really universal ideas. I think that's important. I think this idea that it doesn't even have to be per se a faith orientation, a kosher orientation, but it does have to be meaningful. And so for some people, they're not looking at it through a faith perspective. They are looking through it from the perspective of what is my contribution. What it has to be meaningful to them for one reason or another. For a person of faith, it's going to be meaningful because they understand that there's someone looking on to, again, those funds and resources that have been entrusted with this individual or this family. And there's actually an expectation. For others, it can be meaningful for other reasons, but it does have to be meaningful because otherwise we're not going to take it as seriously, at least as seriously as our balance sheet or as our other investments.
Very true. But you know what, while we're talking about the kosher part, I think it might be useful to, to help the viewers that are watching now, like, what does kosher mean? Like, because most people think kosher, it just refers to food and food that's, that Orthodox Jews eat. So, we talk about this in the book. And Avi, I think it's really worth explaining, like, what does it mean for it to be kosher giving? Why did we call it kosher giving? It's not just that it's universal. Why is it universal? Like, what does it stand for? Because a lot of people don't realize there's more to this concept of kosher and where that word comes from than just a food concept.
That's a very important and fair question. It's interesting because, again, if we get back to some of my Christian friends, if you ask them what is kosher, they will tell you without batting an eyelid that kosher means that the rabbi blessed the food. That's what kosher is. And people who are kosher observant are aware of the fact that that's not the case. There is a kosher, which means that the rabbi has observed the food and made sure that it was not prepared with food that is forbidden or in a process that is a forbidden process. Let's say pork, which doesn't get into the kitchen, or mixing milk and meat, which can't be mixed together in a kosher dish. That's the role of the rabbi or the person who's in charge of the certification. But we move away from that in kosher giving because it's actually not about the certification. It is about the processing of the experience. And so I am a kosher observant Jew, so there's no such thing as walking into a restaurant and not asking and inquiring about the kosher status of that establishment. And this is true, by the way, in Israel as well, not only abroad. It's certainly true when you're outside of Israel. I've got an app on my phone, the kosher app. So I know where is the nearest restaurant when I'm in New York or in Minneapolis. I've never been to Minneapolis. I'm just saying theoretically. But anywhere I might be, where's the closest kosher restaurant? Because we all need to eat all the time, but we have this awareness. And so that mindfulness of, am I doing this right? Am I living my life in a way that I feel is appropriate? That's the mindfulness piece. The meaningful part we mentioned before, which is kosher doesn't come just because I feel like it. I didn't make up the rules. In fact, kosher in Judaism is something that we consider a chok, something that we actually don't know the reason for. There are many people who give reasons for it. They'll say, well, this is a healthier diet. That may be the case, but there are other things that we can do that are healthy that may not involve kosher food, and we don't eat those things because instead we're doing it because there's a divine directive to do so. So again, some people won't look at it through the perspective. They're meaningful isn't because of a divine directive. There's another reason, but it has to be meaningful to you. And then this measurable piece is where we say, you know what? This is not theoretical. Jewish observance
guidelines, right?
Exactly. Jewish observance is observance. It's something that we do. It has a practical implication in the way we live our lives, whether I can eat or not, whether I consume a hamburger or not. That's a kosher experience. And those are the sort of things that we should be thinking about when we not only consume our food, but we take upon ourselves other domains of life. And when we look at the giving, and I'm just going to bring us all the way back to the beginning. That's the beginning of the war. And we're thinking, how do we tell people about the right things to give to. And again, we're not telling you the hierarchy, but we want to make sure that you're aware of, you have the tools to make decisions. So each of these themes actually becomes really important. And it popped into my mind with an epiphany that we needed to call it Kosher Giving. Some people just like the title of the book. They're buying the book because they like the title. They haven't read the book. They haven't read the front panel. They haven't read the back panel. They just like this idea of kosher giving. It has a ring to it. And I'll just mention one other quick thing on that.
Just
and I know
put the link up again.
Oh, thank you. See, this is why we have Yael on the phone. Even though, again, she's sacrificing herself, and we're all seeing the link up here. So again, koshergiving.com/book. And we want to get to spot number 1 in all 3 categories. But again, we're already happy. Number 1 bestseller. That's no small feat. Also, Yael really worked us through that process of understanding how to build up the traction that we needed. I also want to have a quick shout out to the team that is our launch team. I've been inundating them with emails. And I feel so bad for you folks, but I'm so thankful for everything that you've done, whether it's purchasing the book or telling your friends about the book or leaving reviews on Amazon. It's really getting the kind of traction that we were anticipating, even more. And so, A, the system works. B, Yael, you've done a great job. And C, everybody who's been involved in this process. Yael, you were thanking people who've been giving to Israel. I want to thank everybody who's been giving to Kosher Giving. I think it's really significant, and I know that it's been very meaningful to we call this behind the scenes with the bestseller team, but we represent a much broader team. And we mentioned Yael and Avram at the beginning of the call from Sector 4 Strategy, but it's really everybody else is involved. And it wasn't only Talia, who was the editor or the copyright editor on this site, but primarily also Callie Kislowitz, who played a very significant role in the process. And we've got more people coming in on volunteering with different roles. Now that we've got more things to do, we still have volunteers, and there's still this support effort to make it work. We can make it work. Understand that we are giving to the community by putting this on offer, whether it's the koshergiving.com site or the book itself. And so I actually, in that long aside from talking about kosher and getting into book sales, I think I might have lost the train of thought, if not mine, then that of everybody who's watching this. So I apologize. There's just a lot in there and a lot of things that we want to share. And again, this is going to be a follow on to this because you can't put it all into an hour.
That's true. That's true. But I think this is so good. Kosher Giving, it was just at the right time, right? Like, really is the book that people need right now to help guide them. We're still in a war. There's still a lot of questions. A lot of money flooded into different philanthropies over the last 3-4 months. And, it's a good time to reassess. It's a new year. Avi and I actually had discussions about, the book was actually ready. We could have launched before the end of the year. And we made a conscious decision that we wanted to wait until January because we wanted to be relevant for 2024, because we saw the war was still going to be going on. And we wanted people to know that this is something to guide them even in this year. It's not from last year. It's reflecting, and we're learning from what we saw. But it's relevant now, and it's relevant to everyone. Just like Talia said, like, it doesn't, whether you're giving of your time, whether you're giving of your skills, and even if it's not your millions, it's your pennies, it's your dollars, it's your thousands, everything counts. And, you've been blessed with this, and it's your responsibility to be a good steward. And this book, Kosher Giving, will help guide you in how to do that, and to do it from a perspective that's based on faith, that's based on Torah, and to guide you from, like, I love the balance that it's like, it's practical and biblical. Like, we're combining both, because we have to live in this world and work in this world and use what we've been blessed with, and to be stewards, right? We talked about it, hit #1 bestseller in Christian stewardship. And this is why it's something we have to actively learn and continue learning, how to be good stewards of what we've been blessed with. So definitely everybody go out and get your copy.
I've also been flattered. by what you just said, and I've heard from other people that they actually enjoyed reading the book. Some people read the book as a favor to me because we had that launch team, and people are like, "This is really a good read. I'm sharing this, I'm doing this," and that was honestly surprising. I was not, because the book was written, the genesis of the process was different than what I had anticipated. Not the book I wanted to write originally, the book that I felt that I had to write. So what happened was, I did not write a book that I'm proud of. I wrote a book that I'm comfortable with. Meaning, if I had spent a whole year working on it, I would have been proud of it. I would have said, every single, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and knowing that we spoke before about which stories needed to be incorporated and maybe which others didn't. Maybe I would have done things slightly differently had I had more of an extended work process. And yet, I think comfortable is very telling of the time that we're in right now. We are in a war, and we need things to be delivered. We need to be able to give people the tools really to do something. You're 100% correct. 2024 is a new giving season. We learned a lot. Okay, if 2024. So if we're at a different point now and we were in October 6th mentality before the war, that would be one thing. But we have a lot of learning under our belt, and that's also responsibility. What have we as a collective learned about giving, and how can we do this better in this year ahead? So I'm going to do, without being prompted by Yael this time, as we come up at the end of the conversation, I'm actually going to cover up Yael one more time and give everybody that link. Again, it's koshergiving.com/book, trying to reach that #1 bestseller in all 3 categories and not just the 2. We are pleased with the 2, but it would be kind of fun to get into Jewish life #1 as well, in addition to Christian stewardship and nonprofit management and leadership. And there's a lot more to anticipate. This is something that I hope I'll be taking on a book tour in the United States as we launch in hardcover in the coming weeks. Most likely in March, I'll be in the United States with some launches. And Yael and I have also been speaking about what it would look like to do a hardcover launch, even though the book is in English. There are lots of English speakers here in Israel. I did get some comments today when I was blasting all sorts of people that I know better or worse in Hebrew. Listen, guys, the book is in English, but we need some more downloads. And, you can send to 256 people at a time on WhatsApp. And it turns out I happen to know a lot of people. And so that's a lot of WhatsApps. And
oh my,
maybe something is going to happen in Hebrew also. We'll see. I'm not committing to that right now. Let's just start with what we got, but there's a lot to work with.
Yeah. So we're just know, folks, that Kosher Giving is an active, it's an active website. You should definitely go check out the website. But it's something we're actively going to be talking about here in Israel and in the States. I'm really happy to hear Avi's going to be doing a tour in the States. We are in talks with distributors and printers here in Israel about maybe doing a special print run. We're going to see we wanted to reach as many people that need to have it in their hands. So for now, grab the ebook. This is a great resource. It's a great gift to share with your friends, with your congregation. It's a great book for discussion. I told Avi, one of the things I would like to see him do is actually creating a guide for small groups that want to be going through the book together. Whether that's at your temple, at your Beit Knesset, or at your church. Talk about, what does it mean to be a good steward? What does it mean to be a good giver? This is a book that's very accessible to everyone. So definitely go out, get your copy now before the prices go up, and reach out to Avi and his team to find out more about Kosher Giving, koshergiving.com, and the book, and how they can help you to be better givers.
Thank you, Yael. And that's the last time we're covering your face with koshergiving.com/book. Thank you, everybody, for attending this, for sharing this. Even if you weren't live and you're seeing it thereafter, move this around a little bit. Let's create those conversations. Yael has always been correct with this entire process. Yes, book groups, mastermind groups, mini courses, the Kosher Giving community, and perhaps in the future, we're going to have the Kosher Giving Society. There are lots of moving parts to make this work. There's a lot of life that can be breathed into this. And I think, yes, it's true. You don't necessarily have to be giving alone. I do speak in later chapters of the book when speaking about supercharging your giving, that finding the right partners, and sometimes the right partners are your spouse. They could be your neighbors. They could be a professional like the Sector 4 strategy staff, whomever they may be. Giving is something that is by definition about something beyond yourself. And so you want to consider those people who are in your life or could be in your life who can help you do it even better. So thanks everybody for joining us this evening. Talia, Yael, this was a great conversation, and hopefully just more wonderful things are going to come from this. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
Bye. Thanks, Avi.